Alright, hi everyone, welcome back to another video of Salesforce Makes Sense. And in the last video, we understood custom metadata and how to leverage or use that in our Apex code. In this video, we'll try to figure out what is custom settings, what is this offering, and how does it differentiate from custom metadata, and where could we use this, okay? So if I take you to the Salesforce org very quickly, and like we saw, if you type custom settings here, similar to custom metadata, custom settings is also available, right? Now, if you see, when do you need to use custom settings? To create and manage custom data at the organization, profile, and user level. So that this information is pretty much explanatory. And the second point is again important. Custom settings data is stored in the application cache. This means you can access it efficiently without the cost of repeated queries. Okay, and custom settings data can be used by formula fields, Visualforce, Apex, and the web services API. So pretty much all the good things about custom settings have been written here, right? So custom settings. First of all, why has Salesforce created two things? When do I need to access custom metadata, or when do I need to access custom setting? Why do I need to use both of them? Where should I use both of them, or where should I use one of them? And how does it differentiate? What is the benefit of using this versus that? Those kind of questions are always there in interviews in your minds, correct? So for the very basic level to understand, the custom metadata is not a user context or user specific data. First of all, just try to understand, okay? That's more on a master information, or more like a repository information. What did we do in our previous use case? We created a pricing information for region, correct? Was there anything around the organization or profile and user that we had to manage there? No. Irrespective of which user you are, irrespective of whichever profile you are assigned to, and in the entire org, if you are from a specific region, this is your pricing parity. That was our use case, correct? So we didn't have to worry about user context, profile context. But what if you had to worry about it? I'll give you a use case, right? The use case says you're building an inventory system and you want to ensure you have a user or profile specific taxation applied for your products, and you want to store and leverage that in your modules. Now, what does that mean? This means that if Himanshu is from United Arab Emirates, logs into the system, tries to add a product line item, he should be given 12% of VAT. At the same time, if there's another person, Rakesh, who logs in from United Arab Emirates but is of a different profile, or let's say he's basically different, right? That's a different user. He should be taxed 18% VAT. Due to some parameters. So how do you configure, or how do you set up this kind of framework, right? So now your question might be, so Himanshu, I'll create a custom metadata record for each of the users, but then does not make sense. What if you have 10,000 users? Would you be creating each record? No. And even if you do, how do you link it to the user record? Because you don't have a lookup relationship field available in custom metadata, right? You can only have a metadata relationship, but that links another metadata to your metadata, right? So to be able to link your records or associate your custom metadata with users or profile records, you use custom settings. That's where it comes in picture, and that's where you should use it. Okay. Now there are two things. You can either have things at the org level, meaning let's say, I don't know, Coca-Cola, right? Coca-Cola is a global company, right? It might have some rules which are applicable for all the regional providers, Coca-Cola India, Coca-Cola Europe, and everywhere, right? Whoever distributes, or whoever takes up the ownership of distributing Coca-Cola products to the entire country or entire region has to follow the global level rules, right? But then when you come a level below to the countries, or then to the cities, there are some additional rules that get applied. It could happen, right? Government has their own rules, state government has their own rules, some specific part of a specific country, of a specific city, of a specific district might have their own rules, right? So if those rules have also need to be applied on top of whatever the global rules are, how do you configure that, right? That's the kind of ask you can derive, and where you can leverage custom settings, okay? Another good point about custom settings is that it is stored in the application cache. So if it is stored in the application cache, that means you can enjoy no governor limit hits, right? Because it is in the cache. So you don't have to worry about any governor limit hits, no DML, no SOCL that you need to worry about. You can access the records without writing a query, and that will not basically impact your governor limits. That's such a good thing. right? So now let's look at how to make this custom setting and how to, how is it different in terms of the customization. So if I go ahead and click on the new button, and I'll try to create a same pricing parity inventory pricing custom setting here. Okay, now here it is called object name. I'll just call it inventory pricing. And now if you see that you have a setting type, right? So there are two setting types available. You have setting type as hierarchy and the setting type as list. Okay, if you want to configure a hierarchy type setting, this is where you basically have your profile and user level information. Okay, and if you want to make a list type kind of data, that would basically be for your entire org. Okay, so let's try to do something for hierarchy. Okay, because we want to see how do you configure that data. All right, and if you have a very plain tabular data, you can always use the list type. Okay, I'll go with hierarchy, and the visibility I'll just set as public. Protected is basically if you don't want the namespace any other users from the other namespace or any applications from another namespace to try to access it, you can make it protected. Okay, I'll keep it public for now, and I'll say save. Inventory pricing, it should only have underscore here, no space allowed, so I'll just say underscore and I'll say save. The object name is already in use. I'll just say inventory because it's already in use in the custom metadata. So I'll remove the space. Perfect. The custom setting is created. Now, as soon as the custom setting is created, you see similar look, similar feel, but see, this behaves as a custom object. It is not a metadata, so it will not have MDT in the end. Okay. The second thing is you can create new custom fields here as well. Alright, and if you see, the list is very small here also. You don't have the metadata relationship option and you just have your limited fields. Multi-select pick list is not available. Even pick list is not available. Okay, in custom setting. Formula is not available. Rich text is not available. Long text area is not available. Alright, so data types are not available as much as they are available in custom objects. But if your use case is okay to handle it with this kind of data types, please go ahead and use it. Okay, so what I'll do, see, currency is available here. So I'll go ahead and use currency. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and use currency and I'll say pricing and I'll just keep it 18. I'll say always require and I'll just say next and I'll say save. Okay, let's just create one field. I just want you to understand how to use custom settings. It's not about seeing the whole use case come into fruition. And the same way you manage your records in custom metadata, similarly here also you manage your records. Okay, now if you see, when I click on the manage button, you see there's something that's called a default organization level value, and then you have some setup owner section here that says new. So first let me click on the new button here. What happens? You see, it says you get to choose the location, meaning for whom this particular record will be applied. So you can choose a profile or you can choose a user. This lookup information comes in from the custom setting itself. We did not create this custom field because we don't have an option to create a relationship field, right? It has come from the custom setting offering itself. And it says that the data will be cached in the application. So I'll go ahead and say that for this particular user A, which is let's say Himanshu, the pricing should be 250. Okay, don't worry about the use case. Okay, I'm just trying to show you how to use custom settings. So that's my record, right? That's one record I've created. And I want to create one more record, and that's on the organization level. Something happened here. Maybe it wanted to switch to classic or lightning something. Let's switch back. And let's go to custom settings again. I think the record is created. So this is the custom setting, right? Inventory pricing. Let's open this from here. And I'll just say manage. And I should see one record for Himanshu Maheshwari, and the value is basically whatever I said, 250, right? I can create a new view. So that's my user specific information. But what if you don't have a user specific information, right? You don't want to configure it for all users. There might be exceptions. So what value should be given to the other people in the organization? That value you can set here on the default level. So I'll click on the new button here, and that will allow you to set a default value, which is basically 225. Did you understand what we are trying to do? Right? There are 10,000 employees, right? So 10,000 employees, everyone should get $225 pricing for a product, correct? That's for your entire org. Salesforce makes sense, is the entire org. Okay. But if you want to make exceptions for certain people and you want to hike up or hike down the prices, let's say about the use case, you can create a record for specifically them. Can you create a record for specific profiles? Yes, instead of users, you can even do profiles. Okay, so you can do like, ground sales rep should get a 15% discount. So you can create a lower price for them. Understood? Awesome. So now that we have our records created, I want to show you how do you access them in Salesforce, correct? First of all, if I try to now, let's refresh and try to access this particular, custom setting. Okay, let's try to access it from developer console, how we were accessing the custom metadata. So I'll say Command Shift O and I'll simply say inventory pricing. So you see there are two objects. This is the one and this is the one. You can easily say that this one is the metadata and this one is the custom setting. Right now what I want to do, ID, label, ID, name and pricing. These are the three things. I'll say query, execute. I'm getting two records. See, the first record is 225, which is linked to a user, which is Himanshu's record, right? And the second one is 250. No, this is the first one, which is basically the org level, and the second one is basically the user level. If I take a look at the object here, right? Let's get setup owner ID information also, maybe. Let's say query and let's say execute. Right? So it has been set up owner ID 005. Yeah, this one is for the user. Inventory pricing user record is 250 and this is for the org, which is 225. Okay, not that amount of good information, but pricing is what we are interested in, right? These are two references, correct? Now let's go to VS Code and let's create a new Apex class, and I want to show you how do you really access custom setting and how do you play around with it in your Apex code once you have created and configured it. Right, so I'll just get rid of all things that I don't need and I'll say public static decimal, or it should be, okay, decimal is fine, retrieve pricing. Okay, this is fine. And now here I want to access my custom setting and I want to return the pricing information, correct? Now Salesforce says that you don't need to hit any, you don't do any governor limits, and you are the data is stored in cache, correct? So now the thing is, with custom settings, accessing the custom setting is a bit different. Okay, so I'll just show you custom setting methods. Right now what do you normally do here is you basically call your custom setting name and then you use methods here. That's how you use it. Okay, I'll quickly show that to you. So if you go to custom settings methods here, you'll see the way of approaching how to access the records is a bit different of how you do it for custom metadata or custom objects. Okay, so here if you see, for custom settings, for hierarchy custom settings, these are the methods: get instance, get org defaults, and get values. Right now what you need to do is we basically need to understand what kind of custom setting have you created. Have you created a list type? No, so I'll just close it. Those methods are not of our use. Have you created a hierarchy type? Yes, we have created a hierarchy type. Right, and what do we want to do? We want to basically get information or get values, right? Get the value stored in our custom setting for a specific user, right? Or maybe for the entire org, correct? So these are the two methods we are interested in. If you understand things by the name, it will be very easy for you, right? I don't want to get the entire instance. This entire instance will give you the entire record information, but metadata information. I want to get the value. Okay, let's try to access the instance. Let's try to access the value. Let's try to access the org defaults and see how the data is returning. Okay, without opening this here, what I'll do is I'll simply say inventory pricing _ c dot get org defaults. That's my method. That's my first method. And I want to print it out so that we can see what does data that comes as part of this particular object method is looking like. Second, I want to say system.debug instance information. Okay, instance info, and again I can use it by saying inventory pricing, which is my object name, dot, and what is the method name? It's called get instance, right? So let's paste this here. Okay, what did I do? Inventory pricing dot get instance. Okay, and the third one is values. And this should basically be get values method, right? And the get values method is based on either the user ID or the profile ID. Now we know that we have set it up based on the user ID. So let's take the user ID here. How do you take the user ID here? You can simply say user info dot get current get user ID, right? There should be a get user ID method. This will return the record ID of the user who's currently logged in, which will be passed to the get values method, and it will return the information. Okay, let's see. Let's say save. It's okay if you're not understanding a lot of things, just be with me. Okay, we'll figure it out, no problem. Okay, these are the three methods. What I want to also do is I want to also call one more method. Instead of the plain get instance, I want to call the get instance based on the user ID, because we have configured it based on the user ID, right? So what I want to do is I want to pass the user info ID to the get instance method. And let's now go and try to deploy this. So it says return statement is missing. Yeah, because I have not returned the decimal value. I'll just say return 0 and I'll say deploy. Let's see if it deploys now. Deployed fine. Let's go to the developer console and let's try to execute it. And this time it is explore custom setting. And I'm saying retrieve pricing. Okay. No method parameters required. I'll say execute. First of all, does it execute? Fine, it does. And now let's take a look at the debug only logs. So you see the first four values are what we are interested in. We don't want to see the return type. The first one is the org default, which says that this is the name. This is all the date information and the pricing is 225. Correct? If I show you the 225 pricing is for the org level. This is how it is showing up. Perfect. Let's take a look at the second record, which is for a specific user, right? Inventory pricing user. And this is basically showing a 250 price. Correct? So it's showing 250 price. Now, if you see the setup owner ID field also tells you like which user record it is. Okay, so you can see, you can get more information there. However, if you notice, the second and the third log are entirely same because there is only one record in the system. Okay, there's only one record in the system. If I were to quickly show you that I create a new record here and I create it for another user, right? And this time the user is, let's say, integration user, and the price point for this user is $275. I'll go ahead and say save. And I'll go ahead and now re-execute the same code. Okay, I'll just remove the debug from here so that the 0 log does not show up. Okay, okay, let's say execute. Right now, if I take a look at the debug only log, the default inventory or the org level information stays the same. Correct? And then line number 4 gives you get instance information, which is 250. Line number 5 is also still giving you 250, which is for that same user. Which user? The first user. It's not giving any information about 275 record. What about the last one? It is giving you the values. It is giving you get values, right? It is giving you 250, and this is basically the value that is showing up. Right? Now, if you wanted to get information about the 275 record that we just created, how do you get it? You have to ensure that you're passing the record ID or the user info ID, user ID for this particular record. Does that make sense? Right? So to be able to do that, you have to ensure that you're calling the method with the right user info ID. Okay? The get instance or the get instance will not work. It will not give you the entire information. It will not give you the entire record information. It will only give you information based on the user context. Okay, so I'll get rid of this method, and this method basically returns information for whom? For Himanshu, who's currently logged in. But what if I were to simply query, let's say if I query user info equals select ID from user where name equals, or let's look at this name where the name equals integration, right? Integration user, where name equals integration user limit 1 dot ID. Okay, I'll just say user ID, and this should be of type ID, correct? So what I'm trying to do, I'm querying the integration user ID and I'm passing that to the get instance method. Now if you see, things will change. So the instance default will show Himanshu's maybe, and this one will show integration users. Save. You understood what I'm trying to do? I'm just trying to show you how custom setting information varies based on who is logged in, right? Because user info.getUserID is currently me who's logged in, Himanshu. But if I pass user ID, it will basically give you the information for that particular user, whatever custom setting record is configured for that user. Okay. If I go back here, if I go back to my developer console and I execute this again, let's see how the debug log behaves now. All right. Close the previous one, click on the debug only log here. And now if you see, the first one is still the org default. Now the second and the third one are different. See, the pricing is basically 220, 250 and 275. All right. And if you notice, the setup owner ID has changed. Now it is different. IZ, XIZ and EZ. These are two different records. Make sense? So this is how you would be accessing your custom setting records. What about the fourth one? It is giving you the values. The get values method is giving you all the values. So the get values is also giving you the pricing information. Okay, it's a bit different from your get instance, but it depends what is your requirement and accordingly you can access it, right? Now what would we do? We would basically remove all of this, and I would basically, what I'll do is I'll basically say ID user ID is equal to user info dot get user ID, right? This will give me the user ID. And now what I'll do is I'll say inventory pricing dot get values, and I'll get the values based on the user ID. Okay, it depends. See, if you have profile and user both, then you have to put some additional checks, correct? But right now we understand, okay, it is only user based custom setting, so I've used the user ID directly. Okay, now what will this return? This will return me the record, the inventory pricing record, right? So let me just try to see if it returns me in list format or not. Right, I'll just save and let's try to deploy it first of all. Okay, so it says that it will only return one record. It will not return a list because you're trying to access a value for a specific user. Okay, so it is not bulkified on its own. So we have to say inventory pricing details. Now let's try to deploy. This will deploy fine. Okay, now what we need to do, we basically need to say if pricing details is not equal to null, meaning we found the record, right? I want to simply say return pricing details dot pricing. That was the field, right? Let's go ahead and see pricing. Yes, this field. I want to return this. Deploy. Deployed. And now if I try to execute this method, my method should actually show me 250 for Himanshu because he is the currently logged in user. And when I log in as, let's say, integration user, the pricing will be set to 275. Execute, debug, 250. So this is how you have been able to access custom setting record, which is a hierarchy based record. Okay, and I hope now it makes sense and it is clear about when would you use custom settings as compared to when would you use custom metadata, right? Another important thing, like what is the use of this org wide value? See, wherever you don't have a user ID, meaning if you check, right, you might put additional checks here. Check if user ID is part of my custom setting or not. If it is part of custom setting, if it is a part, then I access get values method, correct? Because then that will give me user specific information. But what if it is not a part? If it is not a part, I can access org level information because whatever is the general value for everyone, that should apply. So if this does not return anything, if this is equal to null, so what do? I'll say return inventory pricing dot get org defaults dot pricing. This is what I would return. Does that make sense? So instead of the user specific information, I'm getting the org specific information. I mean org general information. All right, there's some error. It is saying return statement is not reachable because we have covered both if and else conditions. So we can just say return. All right. So now if let's say your user is not mentioned in your table, it is not part of your configuration, but that person logs in, what is the pricing that should apply to him or her? It should be $225. Does that make sense? If it does not, I would recommend you take a look at this video one more time, just one more time, and you will be sorted. The only idea is that because you have profiles and users in Salesforce and you have a hierarchy maintained, if there's any scenario wherein you need to configure information based on profiles and users, custom setting is your way to go. It's not custom metadata. Cool. So I hope custom settings are also clear and custom metadata are also clear. Now it's time to move to custom labels. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.